Hello everyone, welcome to my Knuckles story tutorial. This is an updated version of my video I made in 2020. I replaced or added in some sections to make it more up-to-date and comprehensive, but this also means there will be some awkward cuts and background music because I no longer have the project file, so please try to ignore that. Thank you. Knuckles Story is in my opinion a very good beginner speedrun for this game if you don't mind having random elements in your speedrun, because the movement and the tricks are very straightforward. There's a lot of depth to recognizing piece locations quickly based on radar and figuring out optimal routing for each level on the fly, but you don't need to be perfect at that when you're just starting out. For a beginner, I would recommend getting into the speedrun very casually and just finish runs and learn the piece locations and the routings while you're running. However, I will do my best in this tutorial to explain the most important things you need to know about finding the emerald pieces as quickly as possible. Knuckles Story is not unlocked from the beginning when you just start a new save file in the game, but there are zip archives you can download from speedrun.com under the resources tab of the game. You can download that has 98 files with the story unlocked. Or use the speedrun mod on the guide section to automatically load in your save file for the story you have selected. You can use either camera mode for the entire run, though at a high level, free camera is generally preferable because it gives you more control, especially in narrow sections that are difficult to navigate. Auto camera in return is more stable and may be easier to work with for beginner runners. Once you start the story, do a glide excel, which is just double tapping A, so that Knuckles jumps and glides for a short time, which is the fastest way to get up to running speed. Running is faster than gliding, but gliding has a better acceleration, so it's always best to use a glide excel to get up to speed. Use that to get into the first stage, Speed Highway. Before I start explaining the level itself, it is important to know how the emerald pieces work. For each stage you have to collect 3 emerald pieces, and you see 3 radar slots at the bottom of the screen. Each of these radar slots has its own pool of possible piece locations, so any of the possible piece locations is tied directly to one of the radar slots. So by knowing exactly which of the locations belongs to which piece slot, you can figure out on the fly which piece locations you still get based on which pieces you've already found and which pieces you have already checked for. For example, if you already collected piece in piece slot 1, you don't have to check for the remaining slot 1 piece locations anymore. However, this is very tricky to learn perfectly, so don't worry too much about that right from the start. You will learn these things as you're doing runs, but the way this works is important to know going forward from here. Generally speaking, first pieces are out on the open, second pieces are in enemies, objects or underground, and third pieces are in hard to get to more obscure locations. This applies to all levels, though some pieces only really fit under that framework if you stretch the definitions a bit, but you can use it to remember each of the piece locations. The best way to approach each level as a beginner is to follow a specific route that leads throughout the entire level that goes past each of the piece locations and pick up what you find on the fly. Once your time gets more optimized, you can choose to not check for specific slow piece locations, but for a beginner I would recommend checking for each location every time so that you're on the safe side and you learn all the piece locations. This is the beginner route I would recommend for Speed Highway. Once your PB gets better, the goal for this level is that all 3 piece spawns in the same general area, the section you go through in the first half of the route I showed. Ideally you want all 3 pieces by the time you reach the second balcony you come by at the far end of the stage. One movement trick that is very important to know is how to get smoothly into these slope tunnels. The trick is to glide towards them, release the glide so that you go into ball form, and then shortly before you enter the tunnel you press and hold A again. This will cause you to keep your momentum into the tunnel without getting stuck on any of the walls. Once you collected the piece, you can restart and you will respawn outside the tunnel on top of the building behind it. Each piece you collect acts like a checkpoint, and restarting or dying will respawn you. However, many respawn locations are not at the same spot the piece was located. Some are beneficial in a speedrun, such as this one. Something important to know about Speed Highway is also that all piece 3s are on one of 3 balconies. So if you already have a balcony piece, you don't need to check for any other balconies anymore. Furthermore, there is no piece 1 beyond this area, so on a high level when you can risk resetting, if you do not get a piece 1 by this point, turn around and go to the other area of the stage and hope that all pieces you need will be there. Another route optimization you can do when you want to risk resetting is cutting the beginning here immediately to the right. This not only allows you to take a more direct line towards the desirable pieces in the middle of the stage, but also allows you to gain extra speed from an item box that is placed to the right below this platform. To do this, do a short glide excel in between these 2 pillars to the side and do a full jump upright immediately. You can practice the effect of item box gravity by jumping over this item box towards the far right of the end of the stage. Another cool movement trick particularly for this level is to roll glide off of ledges. To do this, simply start rolling shortly before reaching the ledge and press A once over it to start gliding right away. This preserves much more momentum than jumping and gliding off of it, but can only be done at sharp ledges and not ones that are rounded off like in more natural environments. On result screens, hold the A button. This will skip all the score countdown on the first frame. Once the stage fades out, you can go back to mashing start to skip cutscenes. Now make your way into Casinopolis. Be careful of the folding doors of the hotel, as you can very easily get stuck on them. The best way to get through with Knuckles is by running full speed into their center, wait a moment, and as soon as they're open enough, glide excel into them. There is an alternative out-of-bounds route you can do to get into Casinopolis, however it only saves time when done very quickly, so if you're not confident in executing it reliably, I recommend staying inbounds. The out-of-bounds route requires 2 clips. First, we have to get into the train station, and there are 2 options for that. The first option is to walk into a narrow seam here into the wall and then jump into the load zone of the station doors. The fastest way to trigger the load zone is to jump into the side wall of the entrance hall. Seen from the outside, it looks like this. The other way to get into the station is to use this awning. Jump on top and next to the sign in the middle, do a straight jump and start gliding at this height to get out of bounds. Now we need to get out of the train station into Casino. To do this, wedge yourself into this corner. Make sure you're facing diagonal into it, but no more than 45 degrees away from the green wall. Once you're in this position, do a full jump without touching the analog stick, and once you hit the ceiling, double tap and hold A to start a glide. This should clip you out of bounds. Once out of bounds, you can start holding forward again. But the trick isn't over yet. To make it to the Casinopolis load zone, you have to do a glide reset to extend your glide distance. When you're about here, briefly release and repress the A button to restart the glide. This will reset the glide angle and get you more height in the long run. Casinopolis is probably the most challenging stage to route effectively and read the radar pings correctly. The stage is very compact but has a lot of hard to access areas, which leads to many misleading radar pings. If at the start of the stage slot 1 pings blue, go to the left to the water fountain. If piece 1 pings green, you can see the piece floating on top of a podium diagonally to the right from the start. If piece 1 pings very fast, the piece is behind you on top of the booth. If piece 2 pings blue at the start, it is in the enemy cluster on the top area to the right of the start. Pick that one up later when you get there. If piece 3 pings green, it is the piece in the foot of the statue in the middle of the stage. If you don't get any conclusive pings at the start, I would recommend going to the left to the spring. This also checks for the piece 2 and the enemy next to it. The spring leads you to the top area above the wall. In order to get out of the spring launch quicker, you can press A and then B to cancel it, which you can use to reduce airtime. Another way to get up to the top is the spring to the right of the stage, which is slower but can be useful if you find yourself close to it and want to get to the top. The spring leads you to the area on the opposite side of the wall, to where the 2 pirate ships are. You cannot cancel the spring launch from this spring. You can also use this barrel to get to the upper level by running towards it and then full jumping as you're about to hit it. This allows you quick access to the pirate ship and the enemy cluster. There are only 3 third pieces in the stage. One is in the Sonic statue in the center of the stage, and the other 2 are very close to each other in the top area, one in the mouth of the Lion statue and one in the gear room above the vault. Each of these pieces have specific strats to get them faster. In order to get the statue piece fast, you can clip into this shoe to skip the animation of you breaking the statue. To do that, jump on the tiny slot machine at the bottom of its podium, do a full jump without holding anything on the analog stick, and as soon as you are in front of the ledge right under the statue's shoe, tap forward on the stick. If done correctly, Knuckles will grab onto the ledge. Once she does, tap up on the stick again and Knuckles will ledge grab up into the shoe, clipping into it and collecting the piece. In order to get the lion piece, you have to wait for the cycle of the lion statue to open its mouth. Position yourself in between the lion's paws and wait until he lifts up the paw to the back. Once it slams down, jump up into the spring and the mouth will open right as you fly up. You can also position yourself on top of the lion's paw and glide from there into his mouth. This has the advantage that you continuously have control over Knuckles, so if this is not the last piece you collect, you can immediately continue moving to the next piece. This strat is only really recommended in free camera though. The best way to get into the gear room is by clipping in from the side under the ledge on the top. Depending from where you approach this, you want to either glide into it and climb up the rest when you already have a lot of height, or you can hit this barrel that launches you up. Once you are above the height of the room, press A and B to cancel the launch. You will drop back down and you can glide and grab onto the wall. Now climb up into the top left corner of the wall under the ledge and jump against the bottom ledge and glide into it. You will clip through eventually. This skips having to open the trapdoor at the top. If you find yourself at the pirate ships and want to get up to the gear room, you can hit this floating spring here that brings you directly there. There are two first piece locations in the stage that are particularly bad, and I would recommend in most cases checking for these last if you've exhausted all other piece checks. One is in the shower room, which you can also get a blue ping for while waiting for the line in between its paws, and the other one is very far to the back in the vault. These pieces are really bad and far out, so don't check for those until you've done everything else on the stage. In the rare case that you find yourself in the gear room and have to go to the shower room, you can clip out of bounds here by jumping down the hole and gliding out in between the floor of the gear room and the ceiling of the corridor below. The space in between is tall enough to comfortably fit Knuckles through it, so the glide timing isn't too precise, but you have to make sure to glide out to the left, otherwise you can get caught in the vault. Now you get put into this pass sequence. Glide forward into these stairs, jump over the temple and drop back down on the other side. Alternatively, you can just run around one level lower like this to reduce airtime. If done optimally, this is very slightly faster. Now as soon as you get back into Station Square, there's a small skip you can do. Once you skip the cutscene, the game locks you into place so you can see cream flying by. However, there's a small frame window in which you can punch out of the sequence and start moving early. To do that, I would recommend using two hands. One to press start to skip the cutscene, and then the other mash the X and B button to try and get the punch immediately when the cutscene ends. You can save an extra half second on the skip if as soon as you see that you got the punch, you stop mashing X and B and quickly glide excel. Do not glide excel as you enter this elevator, since the distance is very short and you will most likely either bounce off the door or get stuck on the wall. Chaos 2 is probably the most tricky part of the run to execute. There is a manipulation you can do to skip all of his attack patterns. If you picked up a ring on the Casino Hub world before, glide into him right away, if not, walk to the side and pick up a ring in the boss area, and then glide into him. As soon as a large ball shape disappears, glide into him to attack him. It is important to keep the glide until you hit him. If you drop the glide too early, he will dodge your attack. Once you hit him, tap down on the analog stick to turn around and phase away from Chaos. Now jump, and only during the jump, not before the jump. Turn back towards him and glide into him until you hit him immediately. Repeat that 2 more times. To get into the next stage, you need to take a bit of a detour to pick up the digging upgrade. The segment is very straightforward, however the movement here has a lot of long, smooth turns. The most optimal way to do these is by just running forward, and instead of using the stick to turn, use the shoulder buttons to turn the camera while you keep holding forward, which makes you turn more smoothly and gets the camera in a more comfortable angle. After digging up the monkey destruction switch, you can do a jump cancel, that is quickly pressing A and then B to reduce airtime and be able to pick up the switch more quickly. When using the switch on the first monkey, make sure you slow down to a full stop before setting it down, otherwise you will throw it and lose a lot of time before you are able to pick it up again. You can throw the switch into the monkey at the entrance of Red Mountain though. There are no real specific tricks for Red Mountain you need to know about. This is the route I would recommend for checking for every piece for a beginner. If you have a faster PB and want to risk resetting, you can skip taking the rocket up to the volcano, as there are only 3 pieces there and they are very slow. Since this level is very vertical based, remember always check higher up pieces first before you drop down lower. Red Mountain is mostly about risk assessment. You can take very fast routes, but they have a very high chance of killing your run. If your goal is an optimized PB, you can drop down to lower areas rather quickly and skip out of checking many slower pieces. To compensate for this in a scenario where you want to avoid resetting, there is also a strategy called scouting, where you drop down low right away to check for pings and, Without collecting or even seeking them out, use the process of elimination to determine if you have a piece on top of the volcano. If you do not get pings for every piece down below, quickly restart and take the route up to the volcano. This has the advantage that you can take advantage of lucky sets where all pieces are down below, but still have the ability to back out quickly in case you do get a volcano piece. For beginners, I would always recommend checking all locations though. If you are all the way at the bottom but need to grab the piece 2 that is all the way on top of the mountain underground in the circle of rings, you place yourself under this platform in the updraft, build up momentum for a moment and then shoot out. Now you have to walk back through the cave into the Mystic Ruins to fight Sonic. Glide XL towards Sonic and press B before you reach him to hit him. Make sure to not hit him too early before his invincibility frames run out, because then he will get another set of invincibility frames without taking a hit, which is called a ghost hit. Chaos 4 is a long and tedious fight, but with Knuckles you can manipulate him very reliably only to get the fastest attack. Simply stay away from him and do a jump and glide until you land again, and repeat that as you wait for Chaos to go through his cycles. In an optimal fight, Chaos always comes out of the water at the same times: 7 seconds, 24 seconds, 40 seconds, 56 seconds, and 1 minute 30. If you lose time to getting a slower attack pattern from Chaos, or you lose time hitting him, take that into account for when you expect him to come out of the water next. So if you lose 5 seconds, the next vulnerability is also gonna be 5 seconds delayed. The optimal attack is where he just somersaults and splashes water. The red shockwave loses about half a second to a second, the attack where he hits you with his arms loses 5 seconds, and the attack where he turns into 4 blue balls that jump around the stage loses 10 seconds. To get an optimal hit, position yourself above him as he's about to come out of the water and punch. If you are not confident using the timer as a cue for the boss phases, you can also pay attention to his movements as they always follow the same patterns. 3 movements, attack, 3 movements, vulnerable, repeat. Only exception is the last phase, in which he does 3 attacks before he gets vulnerable. Now you have to go into the jungle. The most reliable way to get into the minecart is to jump above it and then jump cancel by pressing B or X to drop straight down. Once you're in the minecart, best wiggle your stick briefly to make sure Knuckles is locked in position. You can lose a lot of time here by thinking Knuckles is already in the cart, but the game hasn't registered it yet. To get into the next stage, you have to go through a longer jungle segment in order to open up the level. At the start of the jungle, pick up the stone and bring it to the entrance of the level. Use this path to run over the trees and do a full jump over the path underneath to prevent you from falling down. When you drop down the key, be careful to not move away too quickly afterwards. If you unload the key before it locks in, it will despawn and you will have to go back to the start of the jungle area to pick it up again. The movement for the second key is very tricky to do clean, but remember you have the camera buttons you can try to use to make the camera more bearable. This section is the main reason why most people prefer to play in free camera nowadays. Lost World is a very unique stage in this run because it is the only stage where it is possible to skip the Emerald Collection entirely in consequence to the randomness. The trick is to clip through a wall that blocks off Sonic's section of the stage. By getting into Sonic's section, you can use the level end trigger and end the stage without collecting any of the pieces. There are 2 methods to do this. The first one is the one I would recommend. Glide above the item boxes into the wall, pause while holding A for the glide, then quickly unpause with B. This won't work if you are in the middle of the wall, you need to be close to the side. Another method is by breaking one of the ring capsules and walk over the base of the ring capsule into the wall. If done correctly, Knuckles gets into his running animation while being stationary in front of the wall. Once he is in his full speed running animation, again pause and unpause. This method is riskier, as it is possible to fall down. If that happens, get into your glide as quickly as possible by double tapping A and holding it, and then gliding forward. This should get you into the room with the upside down loop. This works because the collision of certain objects unloads while the game is paused, so once you unpause there is 1 frame where you can move through. As you go through the loop to the end of the stage, if you're in auto camera, hold both camera shoulder buttons on your controller to lock the camera to prevent it from snapping around mid-movement. In free camera, you just need to hold down on the stick. If your save file did not complete Lost World as Sonic, which if you download it from speedrun.com it won't, the stage will end immediately. If it did complete Sonic's Lost World, you will still have to jump on the capsule. After going through another pass sequence, the game places you back outside Red Mountain. Immediately jump off the cliff to death warp back into the start of the area. For the remainder of the section, just follow along the route of the story and skip all the cutscenes to get into Skydeck. If you play without voice lines, you can start moving while the "this thing's always changing" cutscene is still on screen. To do that, mash start to skip the cutscene, and as soon as you see the screen freeze, double tap A and hold up left to start running. Now you need to get down into the pool. The best method to do that is to do a very short glide excel so that Knuckles hits the edge of the pool before falling down. This prevents him from being in ball form and grabbing onto walls as he falls down. As you fall, turn the camera left and move Knuckles towards the door. If done right, he slides right in without getting stuck anywhere. Skydeck is the most notorious stage in the run, as there are many pieces that are very difficult to access. The first radar pings you will check for are for the pieces underneath the start in the garages. If piece 1 pings at the start, it is in the garage close to the center to the right. If piece 1 doesn't ping right away, glide to the left and back on the platform. If piece 1 pings while doing that, the piece is in the garage to the very far left. If piece 2 pings right at the start, it is in either one of the 2 garages in the middle, to either the left or the right. If you get any of these garage pieces at the start, glide forward to the lever and tilt it towards you, which opens the door for the garages. Try to avoid collecting the ring right in front of you in the middle, this will be useful later. If you go to collect any of the piece 2s in the garages, be careful since they are in enemies with an electric shield that damages you. Try to triple punch those enemies instead of gliding into them. After collecting a garage piece, you can restart, which puts you on an elevated position in front of the garages. If you've collected the garage pieces or did not get any of them, drop down to the area and glide above it. Here you can get a piece 2 in the cluster of enemies in the middle, or a piece in one of the 2 cannons on either side of the stage. Collect the cannon pieces by gliding into the cannon, and then press B to cancel the jump to drop down into the emerald. If you collected that piece, restart, which will put you on the platform above, so you skip having to climb back up. Now you can get piece 2s in the electric enemies on either side of the stage. You can glide into them, but be careful as it's very easy to accidentally get hit by them. If you get a piece 3 ping here, climb up the structure in the middle of the stage. There can be a piece 3 on either side of the structure, ideally on its back. If it's on the front, try to jump back to the front to land on top of the pathway leading up to it and then carefully jump up to the piece. The principle of getting up on top of the slanted tunnel is the same as with getting into the slanted tunnels in Speed Highway. Do a short glide and release and repress to get into ball form shortly before hitting its roof to retain momentum. However, if by that time you still have not gotten a ping for a piece 3, there are only 2 possible options left. There is one piece 3 very high up on the back area of the stage. The fastest way to get it is by running on this slope and then getting onto the wall to wall run up to it. The wall run is very easy, just make sure your angle is not too steep. If once you do the wall run you notice you did not get the very high piece, drop down, the last remaining third piece is floating in the empty space below, close to some garages on the right side. If you also still need a piece 2 after doing the wall run all the way to the top, you can run on top of the girders to quickly get back to an earlier part in the stage, on whichever side you did not already come past. There are piece 2s you can get in this area in the patches of dirt on the ship, 2 of which are blocked off by the carts over them. If you get one that is immediately accessible, they are very good, but if you get one with a cart over them, they are the worst pieces you can get in the stage. To get these pieces, either go back to the start of the stage to tilt the ship sideways so the cart moves away, or get into this corner to clip out of bounds and collect the pieces from out of bounds. However, this clip is very difficult and risky, so if you are not confident with it, better change the ship tilt. Once you are underneath the cart like this, you have to jump once before you are able to dig out the piece. You can make the out of bounds safer by grabbing onto this wall. There is also an alternative clip strat to get these pieces that is very useful if you realize you have a cart piece earlier in the stage. To do it, you have to gently nudge your analog stick into these cannons to be pushed through the wall, and then you can continue along the wall towards the dig spot. The last remaining pieces are either in these garages, the enemies on top of them, or one lone enemy to the very back of the stage. You can clip into these garages by aiming for the center of the numbers at the height of this gray line that goes horizontally through them. However, if the piece is a piece 2, it is once again an electrified enemy like the ones at the start, so try to get the piece by punching instead of jumping and gliding. Note that all the clips into these garages are harder to do when the ship is tilted, but they are still possible. Before I forget, there is also this extremely cool jump you can do to get up to the center stage piece 3 slightly more quickly that uses the border of the fence as a ramp, although the timing is pretty precise. To do it you need to run towards the fence, run it up as a slope and full jump as soon as you're on it. After Skydeck, the game puts you in a final pass sequence. However, before that you see Knuckles in a cutscene at the beginning of the stage. If at the start of the stage you did not collect the ring in the middle, Knuckles will now pick up the ring during the cutscene. This will ensure you have a ring for Chaos 6. Getting back out of the pool can be annoying, and when you go through the door you briefly lose momentum for some reason. To counteract that, you can punch to hit the spring and get out of the pool with no delay. To get into Chaos 6 boss fight, you don't actually have to walk into the boss arena, it is enough to drop down and walk into the loading zone from underneath. Immediately at the start, run forward and hit 2 of the metal objects Eggman throws into the arena and then move to the outside of the stage while staying directly behind one of the 2 objects. Wait for Chaos to start his first attack, during which he will suck in the metal object in front of you, which will freeze him. Now glide into Chaos. Pick up the second metal object and throw it at Chaos as soon as he turns back towards you. However, do not attack him immediately. Turn back and hit a new metal object that Eggman has thrown, and then hit Chaos. Repeat that process. The goal for Chaos 6 is to always have a metal object ready to throw at Chaos immediately after getting hit, so he has no time to get into any of his attack patterns. Full disclosure, I do this boss in a very weird route that probably seems sketchy to most other people. There's a lot of routes you can do in this boss, and I would encourage looking at other people doing this rather than trying to copy my route. Congratulations! You now know how to speedrun Knuckles' story. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any more questions or if anything was unclear, feel free to write a comment or contact me direct through any platform you want. If you really want to nail down your Knuckles skills, I can recommend looking at high-level runs in the Knuckles Centurion and the Knuckles Stage X20 categories on the category extensions leaderboard pages. The high amount of repetition in these categories really rewards consistency and optimization to a degree you don't get in just regular story runs. I will also link other resources down in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching.